What happens inside an avoidant when the empath leaves first? When an empath walks away first, the world doesn't explode in noise, it implodes in silence. The kind of silence that the avoidant has spent their entire life hiding behind, suddenly turns on them. The kind of silence that once felt like safety, now tastes like exposure, and in that moment, something shifts. Not outside, inside, deep hidden, buried under the layers of detachment they've built over years. Because the truth is simple, avoidants don't chase chaos, they chase comfort. And an empath was their comfort, the one person who understood their emotional language without needing translation, the one who never demanded what they couldn't give, the one who could sense moods they didn't speak, the one who stayed even when pushed away. So when the empath finally leaves first, the avoidant doesn't react the way people think. There's no dramatic regret, no sudden confession, no instant chase. What happens is far more complex, far more hidden, far more psychological. The avoidant does what avoidants always do, they shut down on the outside, while everything cracks on the inside. But here's the twist, this time it's not because they lost someone, it's because they lost the one person they thought would never walk away. For the empath, leaving is strength, but for the avoidant, it is a mirror they never wanted to face. A mirror that reflects their patterns, their fears, their emotional shortcuts, their avoidance, their detours, their walls. A mirror that shows them their own role in the loss they never expected. And when the empath exits quietly, not in anger, not in revenge, not in emotional chaos, but with calm, clarity, and self-respect, the avoidant doesn't feel abandoned, they feel exposed, because the empath leaving first isn't just a breakup, it's a psychological interruption. A disruption of the avoidant's internal system, a rupture in the pattern that once protected them. And the deeper truth is this, it's not the loss itself that shakes them, it's the realization that the empath walked away without needing closure, without needing answers, without needing the avoidant's validation to heal. That level of emotional independence hits them in a place they've spent years avoiding. And in this video we decode what starts happening inside an avoidant, the moment the empath, one who understood them best, leaves first. If you're an empath watching this, drop a comment, hit like, and make sure you subscribe, because this breakdown is for you. The first thing that cracks inside an avoidant partner, the very first reaction that happens inside an avoidant partner, is confusion, but the kind of confusion they themselves cannot put into words. An empath's leaving doesn't make logical sense to them, because their pattern is that people usually tolerate their distance. Empaths are patient, they give space, they absorb moods and withdraw. But the moment an empath chooses, enough, this is it, a shock hits the avoidant partner, and a strange emotional rush erupts inside them. Their system does not expect this, which is why their emotional wiring suddenly overloads. It's a raw emotional wave they can feel but cannot name. Inside their mind there's only a vague sensation, something feels wrong. But what exactly, they can't figure it out. They feel uneasy, but won't admit it. They feel restless, but can't explain why. They feel internally disoriented, but on the outside they act perfectly calm, as if nothing happened. Their mind tries desperately to block the emotions, but the body feels them anyway, and that mismatch becomes torture. The avoidance defensive system simply does not allow them to feel emotions fully, and this is their first internal collapse. They shift into a silent panic. They always believed that emotional distance kept everything under their control, but the empath's departure hits that illusion directly. They become confused because they finally got the very thing they unconsciously wanted, distance, yet they don't feel okay inside. This confusion starts showing on the surface. Their routine gets disturbed, but they justify it by saying, just tired, while internally they're processing the loss. Small little things begin to irritate them, not because the things changed, but because their emotional overload is leaking out. They drown themselves in work, phones, social media, or games to escape the discomfort they can't explain. That obsessive distraction becomes their coping mechanism. There are moments when they suddenly drift into a blank stare, as if their entire system froze. They don't even know what they're trying to process. Then comes another layer, unexpected calmness. But this calm isn't real, it's numbness, a desperate attempt to hold down the emotional chaos inside. Their calm face becomes a mask hiding their internal storm. The most dangerous part of this emotional confusion is that the avoidant believes they're still in control, when in reality, they're simply ignoring the signals from their body and emotions. The empath's leaving puts the first psychological crack in their system, and from this moment on, the avoidant's internal meltdown begins. Without realizing that this isn't just confusion, it's the real impact of the empath's departure pulling their deeply buried fears to the surface. The second thing that shatters inside an avoidant partner: the moment the empath steps away, the avoidant realizes that the sense of control they thought they had was never real. Their entire world has been built around managing distance, manipulating emotional cues, and keeping others at a safe perimeter. With the empaths gone, that carefully constructed illusion collapses. They suddenly feel exposed, stripped of the subtle influence they relied on to feel powerful and secure. The control they assumed they had over interactions, reactions, and even emotions is gone, leaving them unnervingly vulnerable. Inside, there's a creeping panic that they cannot name. Avoidants are used to operating from a place of influence, a word here, a pause there, a calculated withdrawal. But the empath's departure exposes a truth they have long avoided: the fact that they cannot force connection, cannot command attention, cannot manipulate care. Their invisible rules of engagement no longer apply. The very foundation they use to navigate relationships starts to crack under the weight of their new reality. Externally, they might appear calm, detached, or even indifferent, as if nothing has changed. But beneath that surface, their mind is racing, trying desperately to regain footing. They search for ways to reclaim power, often through subtle manipulation, logic, or persuasion, but none of it works. The empath does not respond to coercion or guilt. The avoidant discovers, perhaps for the first time, that their strategies are ineffective, and this realization is profoundly unsettling. Signs that the illusion is cracking often show in their behavior: overthinking every interaction. Suddenly every word, glance, or text is analyzed obsessively. What once felt natural now seems unpredictable and out of their control. Attempts to test or probe: they might subtly create situations to gauge the empath's reaction, looking for any chance to reassert authority. Heightened irritability, frustration surfaces quickly, often over trivial matters, because the sense of stability and control has been threatened. Restless energy: they pace, fidget, or engage in nervous habits as a physical manifestation of internal unease. Defensive rationalization: they create mental narratives to explain why things are not their fault, trying to convince themselves that the loss of influence isn't serious, even though internally it terrifies them. The empath's leaving forces the avoidant to confront a fundamental weakness: their power was always conditional and fragile. Without the ability to manipulate, control, or predict, they are left facing themselves, uncertain, anxious, and alarmingly exposed. The sense of mastery they clung to vanishes, leaving a vacuum filled with insecurity and fear. At this stage, the avoidant's internal world is tumultuous. Every strategy, every plan, every carefully maintained barrier is revealed to be ineffective. Their illusion of control, once a source of comfort and superiority, becomes the very thing that magnifies their panic and destabilizes them. And it is in this moment, as the empath moves forward and maintains their own centeredness, that the avoidant experiences a deep, unavoidable truth: control was never theirs to hold. This cracking of their illusion sets the stage for deeper realizations and more profound emotional upheaval. In the next moments, we'll uncover how the absence of the empath triggers the avoidant's deeper fears and reshapes the internal landscape entirely. The third shift that takes place inside an avoidant partner: once the empath has stepped away, the avoidant is confronted by an unexpected surge of attachment. For someone who has spent so long managing distance and emotional avoidance, this sudden flood of feelings is overwhelming. The emotions they suppressed or refused to acknowledge while the empath was present now return with full intensity. What was once a controlled, cool exterior begins to crack under the weight of delayed attachment, and the avoidant feels a pull that is both confusing and frightening. Inside, they experience a mixture of longing, regret, and an almost obsessive desire to reconnect. The absence of the empath exposes the emotional patterns they never allowed themselves to confront. They begin to notice, sometimes for the first time, the depth of their reliance on the empath's presence, the comfort, validation, and understanding they had unconsciously taken for granted. The very thing they avoided feeling now hits them in a way that is raw, immediate, and difficult to manage. Externally, avoidants may try to mask this rebound with arrogance, detachment, or deflection, acting as if nothing has changed. They may immerse themselves in work, hobbies, or social activities, attempting to fill the void and maintain the illusion of independence. But internally, the pull is relentless. Their heart and mind are caught in a loop of attachment, haunted by thoughts of what was lost and what could have been. There are clear signs that this rebound is happening: restless preoccupation. They find themselves constantly thinking about the empath, replaying past interactions and imagining scenarios that might bring them back. Sudden sensitivity to absence, even minor signs of distance, a delayed message or a quiet response, trigger disproportionate emotional reactions, revealing how dependent they have become. Impulsive outreach. They may reach out unexpectedly, driven more by the need to feel connected than by rational decision-making, often leaving them embarrassed or anxious afterward. Heightened emotional awareness. They notice small details about the empath that previously went unnoticed, such as gestures, expressions, or patterns which now hold a strong emotional weight. Internal conflict. They struggle with a push-pull dynamic, wanting to maintain independence while simultaneously craving the lost closeness, leading to confusion and internal tension. This delayed attachment often surprises the avoidant. They may have assumed that distancing themselves or maintaining emotional barriers would prevent deep connection or loss. Yet when the empath chooses to leave first, those barriers collapse, revealing the true extent of their reliance and emotional depth. The intensity of this rebound is not just about missing the empath, it's about confronting feelings they never allowed themselves to fully experience. For the avoidant, this experience is both destabilizing and enlightening. The sudden emotional surge highlights vulnerabilities and exposes truths about how they navigate intimacy and attachment. And it is in this moment, as they wrestle with emotions that arrive later than expected, that the avoidant begins to truly realize what the empath meant in their life and why their absence has such a profound impact. The rebound of attachment sets the stage for deeper realizations and a confrontation with the avoidant's most guarded insecurities, which we will explore further in the next segment. The fourth internal shift that grips an avoidant partner. Once the empath steps away, a silent panic begins to take root in the avoidant's mind. Unlike the immediate emotional confusion or the delayed attachment, this reaction is subtler but far more consuming. The avoidant starts to confront a deep primal fear, the fear of being replaced. For someone who has always relied on emotional distance as a protective mechanism, the thought that the empath might form connections elsewhere or find fulfillment without them is unbearable. Their mind begins to spin scenarios, imagining the empath moving on, thriving, or finding someone else who appreciates the very qualities they themselves took for granted. Inside, this fear quickly escalates into a form of obsession. They replay past interactions endlessly, analyzing moments, words, and gestures for mistakes or missed opportunities. Every memory of the empath becomes magnified. Every smile or shared experience feels precious and irreplaceable. They realize, perhaps too late, that the empath's presence was not just comforting, it was integral to their sense of security, validation, and self-worth. Without the empath, their world feels unbalanced, and they are desperate to reclaim that lost connection. Externally, the avoidant may try to hide this panic behind indifference, casualness, or subtle attempts to reconnect. They might text, call, or check social media, not to rebuild a relationship consciously, but to reassure themselves that the empath still exists in their sphere. Even when they act detached, internally they are consumed by thoughts of comparison, fear, and longing. The obsessiveness grows quietly, often unnoticed by anyone else, because the avoidant has mastered the art of appearing unaffected. Signs of this internal obsession often appear as subtle behavioral changes, constant mental replay. They relive conversations, moments, and decisions, analyzing every detail for what they might have done differently. Heightened awareness of empath's life. They notice updates, actions, or changes in the empath's life more acutely than usual, even if they try to act indifferent. Sudden need to monitor or check social media, mutual friends, or small signs of activity become sources of silent anxiety and covert monitoring. Emotional overreaction to small cues. A minor message, like a polite greeting or neutral comment, can trigger intense internal responses. Internal conflict between ego and desire. While the avoidance ego pushes for prideful detachment, their emotional core obsesses over the loss, creating a constant push-pull dynamic. This phase of obsession is particularly dangerous for the avoidant because it forces them to face feelings they have long suppressed: vulnerability, fear, and attachment. The very traits they avoided acknowledging become unavoidable in the absence of the empath. The fear of replacement is no longer a distant anxiety, it transforms into a full-blown psychological tension that they cannot easily shake. It is in this state, as their mind loops endlessly over what-if scenarios, that the avoidant begins to confront the magnitude of the empath's importance in their life. The obsession is not just about jealousy or desire, it's a reflection of the void left by someone who truly understood them, mirrored them, and held space for their hidden vulnerabilities. This silent panic and fixation set the stage for the final transformations within the avoidant, revealing how profoundly the departure of an empath reshapes their internal landscape. The fifth and final shift that occurs inside an avoidant partner. When the empath leaves, the avoidant is forced to face the full weight of loss, guilt, and unprocessed emotions. This confrontation is so intense that their mind instinctively seeks protection. Unable to cope with the raw reality of the situation, the avoidant begins to unconsciously reshape memories and reinterpret events. Their brain engages in a subtle form of self-preservation, a mental editing process designed to reduce emotional pain and preserve a sense of control over their fractured world. Inside, this rewriting can take many forms. The avoidant might downplay moments of connection, convincing themselves that the empath was overly sensitive, too needy, or that the relationship was never as meaningful as it actually was. They might exaggerate their own faults or, conversely, minimize their responsibility, creating a narrative that explains the empath's departure without fully acknowledging their own role. The mind becomes a defense mechanism, a psychological shield that keeps the avoidant from being fully consumed by remorse, regret, or the discomfort of vulnerability. Externally, this mental distortion may manifest in subtle comments, retold stories, or selective memory of shared experiences. The avoidant may casually mention incidents as if they were minor disagreements, reframing moments of deep emotional connection into something trivial. Sometimes they even convince themselves that the empath's choice to leave was inevitable, creating a storyline where the loss appears justified or necessary. While it may seem like detachment or rational thinking, it is actually a sophisticated way their mind tries to survive the intensity of absence. Indicators that an avoidant is engaging in this mental rewriting include changing narrative about key events. They describe past conflicts, arguments, or moments of intimacy differently than they happened, often portraying themselves as the aggrieved party. Minimizing emotional investment. They claim that they never cared as much, or that the empath was more invested, even if the truth shows otherwise. Rationalizing betrayal or distance. They create justifications for their past behaviors, convincing themselves it was necessary or unavoidable. Avoiding true reflection. They deflect introspection by focusing on reinterpretation rather than genuine analysis of their choices. Selective memory activation. Certain memories are exaggerated, ignored, or reframed to make their current emotional state more bearable, reducing cognitive dissonance. This coping mechanism, while protective, is double-edged. It shields them temporarily from overwhelming regret, but prevents true self-awareness and growth. The empath's departure leaves a void that no rewritten memory can fill. It is a reminder of the depth of connection lost and the reality of emotional consequences. Through this process, the avoidant convinces themselves that they are surviving, when in fact, they are trapped in a loop of half-truths and altered perceptions. It is the final internal act of defense in a chain reaction triggered by the empath's exit, a complex mix of denial, self-preservation, and emotional adaptation that shapes their inner world for months, sometimes years to come. By reconstructing the past, the avoidant attempts to regain control over what they cannot change, creating a narrative that protects their ego while quietly reminding them of the profound loss the empath's absence has caused. Dear friends, when an empath chooses to leave an avoidant, it's not just a shift in the relationship, it's a turning point for your own life. You might feel tempted to linger, hope for change, or try to pull them back, but remember, your emotional clarity and well-being are your top priorities. Witnessing the internal reactions of an avoidant can be fascinating, but it's not your responsibility to fix or manage them. Focus on your own paths. Allow yourself the space to heal, grow, and rebuild your energy. Engage in relationships, activities, and routines that honor your boundaries and amplify your sense of self-worth. Your empathy is a gift, and it deserves to be respected, not drained in the pursuit of someone else's emotional reckoning. This is your chance to reclaim your power. Trust your instincts, listen to your intuition, and invest in connections that are mutually supportive and nurturing. Every step you take toward your own growth strengthens the life you're meant to lead, a life where you are seen, appreciated, and emotionally safe. Remember, leaving an avoidant is not just a goodbye, it's a declaration that your energy, love, and awareness have value. Protect them, honor them, and never settle for less than the respect and understanding you deserve. If this video helped you understand the dynamics of why leaving an avoidant matters, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your experiences in the comments below. Your journey may inspire other empaths to recognize their worth and step confidently into their own power.